Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am a graduate of FAMU in Tallahassee, one of the schools that's going to be playing in the Circle City Classics. I went to school with a great saxophonist by the name of Cannonball Adderley. And after I finished school, he had just joined Capitol Records. So as a trumpet player, the first thing I wanted to do was ask him to help me get a gig or a recording contract. And he told me, he said, listen, he said, this is a business. Music is a business. There is a business of music. He said, learn the business of music. And I said, man, listen, I don't want to go through all that. Just get me a recording contract. He said, listen, fool, learn the business of music, and then if you still want to press that piece of steel up against your lips to make a record, at least you'll know what to do with the damn record when you finish it. I say that to say to you that this is a very, very exciting time in the music business, because it is in one of the greatest flux of changes that I have seen it in 40 years. Everything that used to work don't work anymore, and that's what I've been hearing everybody say here. So I'm saying that to say that if you look at this business, the music as a business, maybe you'll decide that you don't want to sing. Maybe you might decide that you don't want to keep rapping. Maybe you decide that since I know how to break a record, I'm going to start listening to other people and start my own company. There are many, many, many facets of the music business. There is the people who do public relations, and that's one of the things we're talking about here, the importance of public relations, the importance of image in this business. One of the things that made me start this magazine 32 years ago was the fact that I noticed that, number one, the number one trade publication was called Billboard. They're still out there, but believe me, I have put some fire under them for me to have been able to survive for 32 years. When I started my magazine, Billboard had only 60 black radio stations that reported to them. And when you realize that this publication controlled by way of their charts and the radio stations that reported to them, they control the flow of music. Because if you were not getting played on those 60 radio stations that Billboard used to make up their charts, then it was like you didn't even exist. And where I found out this problem was when I started out in Atlanta, Georgia, and my territory was from Washington, D.C. into Miami, over into New Orleans, and up into Little Rock, Arkansas, and everything below Tennessee. They probably have 10 people working that territory now. But I mastered the art of controlling that territory in that I got the records on that I wanted on a timely fashion, happening all at the same time in all of those radio stations. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how you break records. But what I'm saying to you is that the business has changed. When I started my magazine, Billboard having the 60 radio stations, you couldn't get on their charts. When I started my magazine, the first thing I did was I reached out to, there was over 225 black radio stations. And all you had to do was give me your playlist of what you played based on how many people of the demographics in your marketplace that you serve, you had a weighting on my chart. So in 90 days, I had Billboard running in the closet with my magazine to find out what records I knew about that they didn't know about, okay? And the only way they were able to knock me off was then they went electronically to the radio stations and they started monitoring people's stations electronically. But believe me when I tell you, BRE Magazine opened up the window of opportunity for black music from this to this. Because with my 225 radio stations, I could have, not secondary radio stations, I could have tertiary radio stations. And if those radio stations played the record and it started to sell, just like they were saying, this started a snowball effect, and other people were looking at those stations to decide what they were going to play based on the demographic of the record. The other thing that inspired me to start my magazine was that I saw that Billboard and those other white publications, they used their magazine to not only get as much revenue as they could for advertising, but they didn't bother to tell the positive things about black radio. Case in point, in my estimation, and I'm sure anybody who knows anything about him can tell you that Frankie Crocker, a jock and a program director and an air personality in New York, set the pace for black radio by having the #1 radio station in the #1 market of New York City and the #1 radio station in the world for over 5 years. And Billboard never, ever, ever mentioned his name until one day the courts decided that he should be indicted for payola, and then they put him on the front cover. And I said, this is not right. I want to have a magazine that talks about the positive side of our industry. So my very first year after Frankie was indicted, my magazine was having our very first conference, and I set up a board of people who decided who could be nominated for an award, and then we would have the readers vote on it. And when we went to our first awards meeting, I said, well, this goes without saying that Frankie Crocker has got to win this award. And the chairman of my committee said, oh, no, you don't want to do that to yourself. He's getting ready to go to jail. I said, well, what the hell has that got to do with whether he's the #1 programmer or not? So they voted me down, and they would not nominate him for Program Director of the Year, although he was the #1 programmer in the country in the #1 market. So, ladies and gentlemen, I decided to create the Publishers Award, and I didn't have to ask anybody who got it. And that year, my very first conference, I gave Frankie Crocker the Publishers Award. We're still out here. I'm saying to you, this is a very exciting time in this business because it's in a transition stage, and it really don't cost as much if you know what you're doing. If you know how, sometimes people think that this is a dirty word, hype, but believe me, if you don't learn something about hype, then I don't give a damn how good your record is, you won't stimulate the interest. See, this is show business, and show business is about excitement. So you got to create excitement around your product. The more excitement that you can create around your product, the better the chances you are of impressing all of these people up here so they'll get on board with you, because everybody wants to play a hit, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.